If you ever work alone in a remote forest, don't ignore the radio, don't ignore the silence, and if you find recordings left behind by the ranger who worked there before you, maybe don't listen to the last one. Because some warnings aren't meant to protect you, some warnings arrived too late. 29-year-old Logan Pierce had always wanted to work in the wilderness. After spending years in crowded cities and office jobs he hated, he finally got the opportunity when he accepted a ranger position in the Black Creek Wilderness Preserve. The forest covered nearly 300,000 acres, dense pine forests, steep valleys, miles of unmarked terrain. Most people never ventured far beyond the official hiking trails. Those who did often needed rescue. The ranger station assigned to Logan sat deep inside the preserve. The nearest town was almost 2 hours away. Cell service barely worked. Most communication relied on radio transmissions. Exactly the kind of isolation Logan thought he wanted. The first few weeks were uneventful. He patrolled trails, checked campsites, monitored fire conditions, helped lost hikers find their way back. The work was peaceful, quiet, simple, at least at first. One afternoon, while organizing storage shelves inside the station, Logan discovered an old cardboard box hidden behind several filing cabinets. Dust covered every side. The box looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Curious, he pulled it out. Inside were dozens of cassette tapes, each labeled with dates and ranger patrol numbers. Most of them belonged to the previous ranger assigned to the station, a man named Daniel Reeves. Logan recognized the name immediately. Daniel had worked the district for nearly 8 years before suddenly leaving. Officially, he'd transferred to another region. That was all anyone ever said. Whenever Logan asked about him, conversations ended quickly. People changed the subject. Nobody seemed interested in discussing Daniel Reeves. At first, Logan assumed it was workplace gossip, nothing more. That evening, he took several tapes back to his cabin. The old tape recorder still worked surprisingly well. Most recordings were exactly what he expected. Routine patrol updates, weather observations, wildlife reports, nothing unusual. Then he listened to a tape recorded about 6 months before Daniel disappeared. The transmission started normally. Patrol Route 7, weather clear, no fire activity. A few minutes later, Daniel's tone changed. Observed an unidentified individual near marker 18. Logan paused the tape. That wasn't unusual. People occasionally wandered into restricted areas. He continued listening. Attempted verbal contact. Subject did not respond. A brief silence followed. Then Daniel added something strange. Same individual observed yesterday approximately 12 miles south of current location. Logan frowned. 12 miles, that was a significant distance, still possible, just unusual. The recording ended shortly afterward. Over the next several nights, Logan listened to additional tapes. A pattern began emerging. Daniel repeatedly mentioned the same unidentified person. Always alone, always distant, always watching. The descriptions never changed. Tall, dark clothing, standing among the trees, never approaching, never speaking, never leaving evidence behind. The reports continued for months. Sometimes Daniel saw the person near hiking trails. Other times deep inside remote sections of wilderness where nobody should have been. One recording particularly caught Logan's attention. Observed subject again near Cedar Ridge. Daniel sounded irritated. Distance approximately 200 yards. The next part sent a chill through Logan. This marks the 6th sighting this week. Several seconds passed. Then Daniel quietly added, "I don't think he's following the trails." The tape ended. Logan sat silently. Something about the recordings felt wrong, not frightening, just wrong. The reports sounded too consistent, too detailed, too serious. A ranger wouldn't repeatedly document the same person without good reason. The following morning, Logan mentioned the recordings to another ranger during a routine supply delivery. The man's reaction immediately caught his attention. "Daniel Reeves." Logan nodded. The ranger looked uncomfortable. "You found those tapes?" "Yeah." The man stared toward the forest. then quietly replied, "I wouldn't spend too much time listening to them." Logan laughed. "Why not?" The ranger hesitated. "I don't know, that's not an answer." The man sighed. "Daniel changed during his last year here." "What do you mean?" Another pause. "He started reporting strange things." Logan immediately thought about the recordings, the person in the woods. The ranger's expression tightened. "You heard those already?" Logan nodded. "What happened?" The man shook his head. "Nobody knows." Then he loaded his supplies into the truck and left. The conversation ended there. That night Logan listened to more tapes. The reports became increasingly disturbing. Daniel no longer sounded annoyed, he sounded worried. Observed subject at Old Fire Road. Observed subject near river crossing. Observed subject outside lookout station. Each report came from completely different areas, locations separated by miles, sometimes dozens of miles, yet the same individual somehow appeared everywhere. Then Logan reached a recording dated only 2 weeks before Daniel vanished. The difference in Daniel's voice was immediately noticeable. He sounded exhausted. Patrol update. Several seconds passed. Subject observed again. Heavy breathing filled the recording. Distance approximately 50 yards. Logan sat forward. 50 yards was far closer than previous encounters. Then Daniel said something that made the room feel colder. "This is the first time I've seen him after dark." A branch snapped somewhere in the background. Daniel stopped speaking. The silence lasted nearly 20 seconds. Then he whispered, "He's closer now." The tape abruptly ended. Logan stared at the recorder. A strange uneasiness settled over him. For the first time, the recordings no longer felt like routine reports. They felt like evidence. Evidence of someone genuinely frightened. Over the following week, Logan couldn't stop thinking about Daniel Reeves. The recordings became an obsession. Every night he listened to another one. Every night the situation grew worse. Daniel's reports became increasingly paranoid. He stopped referring to the figure as a subject. Instead, he called it the Watcher. One tape stood out from all the others. It began with Daniel speaking unusually fast. "I saw him again today." The sound of footsteps echoed through the recording. Different location, same clothes. Daniel paused, then quietly said, "I don't think he's moving between sightings." Logan frowned. What did that mean? Then Daniel explained, "I think there might be more than one." The tape ended moments later. That was the night Logan began having trouble sleeping. The forest suddenly felt different. Larger, darker, more isolated. 3 nights later, Logan experienced something that made him remember every word Daniel had recorded. He was returning from a late patrol near an old fire road. The sun had already set. Darkness filled the forest. Only his flashlight illuminated the trail ahead. Everything remained quiet until he heard it. A voice, faint, distant, calling from somewhere among the trees. "Logan." He stopped walking. His pulse quickened. The voice sounded human, close enough to hear clearly, yet nobody should have been there. The nearest campsite was miles away. Silence returned. For several moments nothing happened. Then the voice came again. "Logan." This time it sounded closer, much closer. A chill crawled down his spine. Without realizing it, Logan found himself scanning the darkness beyond his flashlight beam. Looking for movement, looking for whoever had called his name. Then he saw something far between the trees, a silhouette standing perfectly still, watching him. And suddenly, for the first time since arriving at Black Creek, Logan understood why Daniel Reeves had sounded terrified. Logan couldn't move. The silhouette stood among the trees approximately 50 yards away. Motionless, watching. The darkness made details impossible to see. Only the outline was visible, tall, thin, human. At least it appeared human. For several seconds, neither of them moved. The forest had become unnaturally quiet. No wind, no insects. No birds, nothing. Then the voice called his name again. "Logan." This time it came from somewhere to his left, not from the figure. Logan turned instinctively. The trees were empty. His flashlight beam swept across the forest. Nothing. When he looked back toward the original silhouette, it was gone. His stomach dropped. The figure hadn't walked away, hadn't run, it had simply disappeared. Logan immediately returned to the ranger station. For the rest of the night, he couldn't stop thinking about Daniel Reeves. Every recording suddenly felt less like paranoia and more like a warning. The next evening, Logan pulled out the remaining tapes. Only 3 were left, the final 3 recordings Daniel ever made. He inserted the first one into the recorder. Static crackled through the speaker, then Daniel's voice emerged. He sounded exhausted, worse than before, as if he hadn't slept in days. Patrol update, heavy breathing followed. Observed the watcher again. Several seconds passed. It's getting closer. The statement hung in the silence. Then Daniel continued. I saw it near Station 4 this morning. Station 4 was impossible. Logan knew the location. It sat nearly 30 miles from where Daniel had reported seeing the figure the previous evening. Nobody could move that distance through wilderness overnight, at least not on foot. The recording continued. I don't think it's following me anymore. A pause, then Daniel whispered, I think it's waiting for me. The tape ended. Logan sat silently. A feeling of dread settled over him. He immediately played the next recording. This one was shorter. Daniel sounded frightened, truly frightened. I finally got close enough to see its face. Logan leaned forward. This was the first time Daniel had mentioned seeing details. A long silence followed, then Daniel spoke again. It looked familiar. Another pause, too familiar. The recording ended abruptly. No explanation, no details, nothing, just those 2 sentences. Logan stared at the recorder. His pulse quickened. The final tape remained on the table. The last transmission Daniel Reeves ever recorded. The recording everyone seemed eager to forget. Outside, rain began striking the cabin windows. Thunder rolled across the forest. The atmosphere felt wrong, almost oppressive. After several moments, Logan inserted the final cassette. The tape began with static. Several seconds passed before Daniel's voice emerged. The difference was immediate. He sounded terrified. Branches snapped somewhere in the background. Heavy breathing filled the recording. Daniel was running. This is Ranger Reeves. The sentence broke apart as he struggled to catch his breath. If anyone hears this. A loud crash echoed nearby. Daniel cursed, more running, more branches breaking. Then came something Logan would never forget. Another voice, faint, distant, calling from somewhere behind Daniel. Daniel. Logan froze. The voice sounded almost identical to Daniel's. The recording continued. It's following me again. More heavy breathing, the sound of leaves crunching beneath his boots, then silence, a terrifying silence, as if Daniel had stopped running. Several seconds passed, then he whispered, it's right there. The fear in his voice felt genuine, raw, primal, the kind of fear people experience only once in their lives. Then Daniel spoke one final warning. If you hear someone calling your name out here. A loud impact interrupted him. The recorder rattled violently. For a moment, all Logan heard was static. Then Daniel whispered 4 final words. Don't answer it. The transmission ended. Silence filled the cabin. The tape was over. Daniel Reeves was never heard from again. Officially, he resigned several days later. At least that's what the paperwork claimed. But Logan no longer believed that. Something had happened in Black Creek, something nobody wanted to discuss. Over the next several weeks, Logan became increasingly obsessed with uncovering the truth. He searched old records, archived reports, patrol logs, anything connected to Daniel. Eventually, he discovered something disturbing. Several rangers assigned to Black Creek before Daniel had reported similar incidents. Unidentified figures, voices in the woods, people calling their names. The reports stretched back decades. Most had been quietly dismissed. Buried, forgotten. Then Logan found an old photograph stored inside a maintenance archive. The image appeared ordinary at first. Several rangers standing beside an old lookout tower. The date on the back read. Logan examined the photograph carefully. Then his stomach tightened. A figure stood among the trees behind the group, partially hidden, watching, tall, motionless, exactly like the descriptions in Daniel's recordings. The discovery unsettled him. Then he found another photograph. The same figure appeared again, then another. Again, same position, same appearance, no visible change, no aging, nothing. Logan spent hours comparing the images. The figure remained identical across every decade. That wasn't possible, yet there it was. Watching from the background, always distant, always observing. That night Logan barely slept. Around 2:30 a.m. a sound woke him, a voice outside calling softly from the darkness. Logan, his eyes opened instantly. The voice came again, closer this time. Logan. The recordings echoed through his mind. Daniel's warning, don't answer it. Logan remained perfectly still. The voice continued for several minutes, sometimes near the cabin, sometimes farther away, always calling his name. Then it stopped. The silence that followed felt worse. The next morning, Logan stepped outside. Fresh footprints surrounded the cabin. One set, large, deep. Whoever made them had circled the building repeatedly during the night. His pulse quickened. The tracks led toward the forest, then vanished. Months passed. Logan eventually transferred to another district. Officially, he claimed the isolation wasn't for him. Unofficially, he couldn't spend another night in Black Creek. Even now, years later, he still keeps Daniel's recordings locked inside a box. He never listens to them, and he never returns to that forest. But one detail still bothers him, a detail he noticed only after leaving. In every photograph containing the mysterious figure, someone was missing: a ranger, a hiker, a worker, a person who later disappeared from official records, almost as if the figure wasn't merely watching, it was waiting. And according to the most recent photograph taken at Black Creek, the figure is still there, standing among the trees, watching, waiting for someone else to hear their name. If you are brave enough to hear more nightmares, subscribe to Tales of the Dark, and if you have your own terrifying experience, leave it in the comments or send your story by email. Maybe your nightmare will become the next story told here.